There are a lot of different rare collections you can have in Pokemon Go. And today, that's what we're talking about. So welcome back to another YAP session. I don't even know what episode this is, but if you don't know, this is the Pokédex podcast. This is episode 49, actually, of the Pokédex YAP sessions. Pretty much the Pokédex podcast where we talk about different topics. Today, this week, we're talking about something pretty fun. We're talking about Pokemon Go collections and which are the rarest in Pokemon Go. So pretty much the idea for today is we're going to be breaking down different groups of Pokemon, different collections that you can complete in Pokemon Go. And if you don't know what a collection is in Pokemon Go, like the easiest way for me to explain it is kind of like, think of like the unknowns, like collecting every single letter of unknown is completing the unknown collection. And there's, I don't know, maybe not hundreds, but there's a lot of different groups of Pokemon you can go ahead and work on catching them all. Because at the end of the day, Pokemon Go is a collector's game. So today, we're gonna be breaking down every single different group of Pokemon you can go ahead and work on completing in the game. And then I'm also gonna give them a rating out of 10 for the rarity. So why am I doing this? Well, honestly, two reasons. Number one, I feel like recently the overall arching, even I've seen this in my Discord and my mods have been telling this, but like the overall consensus towards Pokemon Go has been fairly negative. You know, with the with the Go Fest Max Finale event that just recently had, everybody said that was a pay-to-win event, which I fully agree with. But overall, there's just been a lot of like negative content, I guess, going out there. And even my YAP sessions, looking back at the last 4 or 5 weeks, I find like this happens every once in a while where I'll get pulled into like this negative hole where it's like every video is kind of a negative topic, which is like, honestly, again, completely respectful if our outlook as a community is negative towards the game, or if my outlook is negative, I'm going to make content. But I wanted to just, keep it light this week with something a little more positive and go into collections. Now, the second reason I'm making this video is because I feel like, especially post-Go Fest, especially post-summer, motivation is a huge thing that players struggle with in Pokemon Go. Now, my number one thing with motivation is, I guess, like, the way you lose motivation is when you lose an end goal, something to focus on and work towards. And when Go Fest is over, there's like, you don't really know what the next event is. I guess it's like wild area, but like we don't really know where to go next. And collections is like one of the best ways, and I've talked about this before, but it's one of the best goals, one of the best like things you can focus on getting towards to keep your motivation up in Pokemon Go. When people talk about Pokemon Go burnout and they're losing motivation for the game or whatever, I always tell them set a goal, set something that you're working towards. And now whether that's like level 50, whether, I guess level 80 is coming out soon, but like whether that's level 50 or whatever, it's nice to have a goal, something to work towards. And that'll be the reason you get out of bed to go hunt that. Like at the end of the day, I think the definition of burnout, I'm not 100% sure, is like, or at least my definition of burnout, you'll burn out when you lose the vision of where you want to be, because you're lost. You don't know where you're going, what you're doing, so then you get burnt out because you're like, okay, what's the point of doing this? But if you have a good vision of the end goal, aka let's say a collection you're working on, it'll give you a reason to go out, a play, and something to strive towards. So I think this is going to be an amazing time in the game right now to set goals for different collections, and that's what we're doing today. I'm going to break down every collection in Pokemon Go, and maybe you guys can come up with some. I'm also going to talk about the ones that I'm currently working on and all of that. So yeah, I'm excited. We're going to get into the Pokédex YAP session. Throw this on Spotify, by the way. We are on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. I've never said that sentence before, but that's such like a podcast. Listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Check it out. And yeah, we're going to talk about it. Now, before I talk about it, first of all, timestamps below if you want to skip to the actual content of the video. Do quickly want to swing back to 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I put out a YAP session. I want to make sure I articulate this in the best way possible. I put out a YAP session, talked about remote trading and regional Pokemon. And that got a lot of negative feedback and backlash about my opinions on that. And at first I was really frustrated because I was getting, there's people saying some pretty mean things. At the end of the day, I am human, I have feelings. So when people are saying things about me online, it made me pretty upset over the last 2 weeks. So I completely stopped reading comments. The comment section is kind of scary for me now almost. And I did what I needed to do to kind of get back to my baseline. And now I feel like I have a much more objective view over the situation. And looking back at the video, I was not really proud, and I apologize for, how I worded my opinions. I feel like I did not word my opinions in the correct way about how I feel about remote trading and regionals. in the short, quick version is I really like remote trading. I think it's a feature I've asked for a long time. However, I do hope that regionals can't be remote traded because I do like regionals and I do like the rarity of regionals. That's pretty much all I was trying to say. I feel like I went down a long-winded thing with not wording it. And now I think that's just part of the natural thing of YAP session. YAP session here is pretty much just me recording a video, no cuts at all and nothing. A little bit of preparation, but it's just kind of like I'm just spitballing things. So sometimes things don't come out the way that I want them to come out. I guess like I feel like sometimes your thoughts in your brain don't always come out the way they're in your brain when you put them to words. And I feel like, so that's just natural. Sometimes that's gonna happen. So I do apologize for, I guess, how I worded it. It did hurt a lot, all those negative comments. I kept trying to remind myself that like at the end of the day, and this is the best thing for anybody who does encounter negative comments online or people calling you names, is that you really don't know anybody online. Remember that? Like even you guys don't know me. You don't know what my values are. You're not in my brain. You don't live the life right beside me. I don't know you guys. Is it even people in your life that you interact with every day? You really don't know those people and their values. The only thing you know is yourself. So you got to remember to always go back to yourself, know your values, and when people say things about you, maybe they'll make you doubt yourself, but if you can go back and be like, no, I am not that kind of person. That is not what I value. I just have so-and-so opinion. I think that's just the best way to kind of get through that. So that's what I did over the years. Remember to always try to just be kind online, all that stuff. And also, mainly, the main thing is allow people to have differentiating opinions of you. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to say it's a problem in our society or our culture, but like sometimes I guess just like the concept of arguments and the concept of debates have gotten, maybe it's just because it's in Pokemon Go, but it's gotten like to a point where like sometimes it feels like there's just never any constructive debates or people can't even agree to disagree. Even me myself, I'm gonna say, even myself, I kind of find it hard because when emotions are high and things are going, it's kind of hard to like, take a step back and be like, okay, this person can have a different opinion than me and that's completely fine. But I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I just wanted to, I guess, apologize for how I worded that. And I will be making another YAP session when remote trading, hopefully, fingers crossed, does come to the game. I will make a more, I guess, prepared YAP session going into my thoughts on it. Because I do really want remote trading. I'm just somebody who likes regionals, and that's my opinion. Hope you guys respect it. I respect it if you guys think regionals should come to remote trading. We'll just have to see where the cards end up falling and what, oh my God, there's a bug in my ear, what Scopely decides to do. If they bring remote trading, has been leaked, so hopefully it comes soon. Anyway, let's get into something more out of positive light. Anything else to update you guys on before we hop deep into the collections? Not really. I'm excited for Vancouver City Safari coming later this month, so I'm excited for that. Been spending a lot of time at the cottage enjoying the rest of the summer. We're going into fall here in Canada, so the leaves are about to start going orange, which is like one of the nicest times of the year. Excited for that. But anyway, yeah, let's talk about collections. Okay, this is a fun little spot to be. Hopefully it's not too echoey. We're at the gazebo here. We're at Walter Baker Park, which is where all the Canada campfire meetups happen, and hopefully they get a campsite here soon because it's pretty good for Pokemon Go. If you've seen some of my live streams, we sometimes play here. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, collections. What collections could you work on in Pokemon Go? Actually, looking at them, I've made... Oh my God, there's a wasp. Dude, wasps love me. If you watch the live streams, they're literally always... I don't think there's ever been a YouTube video I've made where there hasn't been a wasp that's made a feature. I swear to God. But nonetheless, let's start with the number one, which is the most basic collection in Pokemon Go that most trainers, I think, is, I guess, their main strive, their main goal to work towards. And that's going to be a Pokédex collection, a living Pokédex. Now, we're going to be using the word living a lot in this series, and that's because what living means, well, living has a lot of meanings, but living in the terms of Pokemon Go, what it means is the concept of a Pokédex where you have one version in your storage of every single Pokemon in the game. So it's not the fact where you catch a Charmander, you evolve it to I almost said you evolve to a Squirtle. You evolve it to a, Charmeleon and then a Charizard. How do I forget this? I've actually been watching the anime. I've been watching the anime, reading the manga, and playing Pokemon Red all 3 times. So I've been mixing up the storylines in them, but Ash's Charmander evolves so quick into Charizard in the anime. Anyway, what am I trying to say? Living Pokedex is not where you evolve Charmander into Charmeleon into Charizard, because that will count as like, at the end of the day, you have one Charizard in your storage, but you have the Pokedex entry for all three. No, a Living Pokedex is where you have a Charmander, you have a Charmeleon, and you have a Charizard. Now, I guess the most basic Pokedex would be to collect into your actual Pokedex, into your actual, like, you know, in-game Pokedex, you know, get a Dex entry for every Pokemon, catch every single Pokemon. But a Living Pokedex is taken even further by actually holding in your storage one of every Pokemon. So that's going to be a very common concept that we're going to see, the word living. And obviously it equates to Pokedex, but I don't think there's a lot of people who go with a Living Pokedex. I don't know, I guess it's just not as common as a collection people work on. People instead prefer to work on something that I have been debating starting, which is a Living Shiny Dex. Okay, so you can kind of, I guess, actually, before we jump to the Living Shiny Dex, Living Pokedex, how hard of a collection is it to complete? Okay, so 10 is going to be hardest, 1 is going to be easiest, by the way, for our rankings. I think, in my opinion, compared to some of these other Pokedexes we're about to talk about in this video, I think I'm going to give the Living Pokedex like a 2 or maybe a 3 in terms of difficulty rating. It's hard, but it's not too hard. At the end of the day, you can get a lot of regionals traded to you. So obviously, those are going to be hard to get, but regionals can be traded to you. Legendaries will probably be tough. Don't get me wrong, getting a Living Pokedex, very hard. But again, if we're comparing it based on the things I'm about to talk about, it's pretty easy. So that moves us in, obviously, I already mentioned it, Living Shiny Dex. So Living Shiny Dex, as you know, is already the, it's the same thing as a Living Pokedex, but every single Pokemon in your storage is shiny. Now, this is something I've debated doing, having the privilege to travel around the world, being in that position of privilege and go to all these events. I just recently looked at my storage and I'm like, I actually am really, really close to having a Living Shiny Dex in Pokemon GO. Now, I'm not one to evolve shiny Pokemon. If you actually look through my Pokemon storage, through my Pokedex, you'll notice that, like, I might have like a shiny Skorupi, but not a shiny Drapion, because I have like 3 or 4 shiny Skorupis, but I don't really evolve them because I'm more of a power. If you know me at all, I prefer power. I prefer 100% IVs, meta relevant Pokemon. That's what the channel is built on, right? You don't see me in my videos being like, I guess sometimes I'm like, this is a rare shiny to get, but I'm more saying that because if you catch this rare shiny, you can then trade it for something strong. Pokedaxi is a man of power. That sounds really weird. I take that back. Pokedaxi is somebody who enjoys meta relevance. Pokedaxi is a man of power. That's crazy. But anyway, Living Shiny Dex is definitely going to be probably one of the hardest things to complete in Pokemon GO. Now, I've thought about this a lot, and the main reason the Living Shiny Dex is so hard is obviously the regionals are hard, but I will say, if you're like a veteran player or somebody who's been playing a while, shiny regionals have usually been shiny featured, or regionals that can be shiny have been featured during global events. You know what I mean? So, like, for example, if you wanted to catch a shiny Tropius was available during, was it Hoenn Tour? Tropius is Hoenn, right? Was featured during Hoenn Tour. So maybe you didn't get it during that, but like hopefully you're able to get it traded to you for something else. Overall, a shiny Living Dex is one of the hardest collections in Pokemon GO, catching one of every single shiny. It is something, actually speaking of, if you're listening to this and you want to see a series, I've been thinking of making like a 3 or 4 part series where I work on completing my Living Shiny Dex. Let me know in the comment section below. But definitely hard. I'm going to put it up there. I'm going to put it as an 8 of 10. No, I'll probably put it as a 9 of 10, because I do think there's a harder collection to complete than a Living Shiny Dex. But I do think it is one of the hardest collections in Pokemon GO. Because again, the main shinies that I think are the hardest to get are obviously shiny regionals. So like shinies like Tropius, Relicanth, Tauros, etc. Shiny Kecleon is a really hard one to get if you didn't have that. Shiny Larvesta and like the egg hatch shinies. So shiny Larvesta, shiny Volcarona, shiny Salandit, and shiny Salazzle, super hard. But the hardest shiny to get currently in Pokemon GO is most likely shiny Rotom. Shiny Rotom's been featured once, where I believe you get 1, maybe 2 checks of it, ever. So it is easily one of the hardest shinies to get in Pokemon GO. making the shiny living dex. And obviously you can point at every single shiny legendary and raids and all that stuff, and if you don't raid that much, those are hard to get, but I think those are the hardest shinies to get in Pokemon Go. So you could also take this even smaller, by the way. If you're looking for like a new little challenge, if you don't want to take on a shiny living dex, I know some people will sometimes break it down to like only shiny baby Pokemon, where can you get one of every single shiny baby Pokemon? That's a fun little collection. I know a lot of people, well, I don't know a lot of people, but the idea came to me of like breaking it up into like colors. Like, can you collect every single blue shiny Pokemon or every green shiny Pokemon? You know, you could even do, you know, color groups. I don't know. You can break it down a lot of different ways. Overall, a shiny living dex is one of the hardest collections to complete in Pokemon Go. But if you're looking for something to go after, if you're looking for a big long-term goal, something to motivate you to get out, it's great, because honestly, the best part of a shiny living dex is it breathes new life, in my opinion, to mundane weekly events. In the fact of like, let's say an event comes around and you're like, oh, this event sucks, the spawns aren't good. You can look into your shiny Pokédex and be like, what shiny am I missing from this event? So it gives you something to hunt towards the event. And I've seen comments about this. I've never thought about this. I've never put 2 and 2 together, but people in the comments are like, oh, this event might suck for you, Dax, but you know, shiny Buizel is finally back. And at first I'm like, hey, Buizel's Pokemon sucks, not meta relevant. But you know, now that you have that new goal for a shiny living dex, that's something new I like to hunt towards. So 100% shiny living dex. If you guys want to see a video, I'll probably make the series anyway, but I'm excited to look at it. I know I'm not missing that many shinies. I think I have all the Kanto shinies. Gen 2, I'm missing Famfi, and then I haven't looked too far, but I'm missing a couple in the other generations. So anyway, fun little challenge. Okay, next. One that honestly, in my opinion, I'm not a huge fan of, but if you're big into trading, a lot of people like to do it, and that's going to be a living lucky dex. Now, if you don't know what a lucky Pokemon is, when you receive a Pokemon from a trade, there's like a 5-ish% chance of a Pokemon going lucky, where the IV floor is going to be 12, 12, 12, and they're cost half the amount of Stardust to power up. So the odds of them being a hundo is 1 in 64, pretty high. And then they're also going to be cheaper to power up. I'm just going to run over here while I'm talking just to make sure I'm still recording, because this is what I mean. Sometimes I literally forget to press record. But anyway, 12, 12, 12 is the IV floor. So a lucky living dex, as you could probably put 2 and 2 together, because I've talked about it a bunch, is going to have one of every single lucky Pokemon in Pokemon Go. Now, obviously, you wouldn't be able to get, and honestly, for most of these collections as well, there are some Pokemon that are just impossible to get. For example, there are some shiny mythicals that are not out in Pokemon Go, so you can't even get them for the shiny dex. There are also some Pokemon that aren't even out in Pokemon Go, so you can't even get them for the Pokédex. And same thing goes for the lucky dex. You can't trade mythical Pokemon, so you can't get lucky versions of mythicals. I think there was a glitch. There was a glitch a while back, super far back, where you could trade mythicals. I think it was an accident, and people were getting like mythical Darkrai lucky. But it's not possible anymore. So you can't get those Pokemon pretty much for the lucky Pokedex. But it's a great little hunt to go after. I know I had a friend, Ben, who I used to play with a lot, who was part of my OG crew back in Ottawa. And he would always mention that he's working on a lucky legendary Pokedex. So one of every legendaries in their lucky forms. I think this is a great collection to go ahead and work on, honestly, as a, not only if you're ever looking for something from like lucky trades, you know what I mean? Like if you can't come up with something you want from lucky trades, or the person doesn't really have a super meta relevant thing you might want, like looking into your lucky deck, seeing what luckies you're missing, mainly legendary ones, and then asking for one that way is a great way to come up with things about lucky, to come up with ways or lucky things to get from lucky trades. I'm sorry, I'm spitting over my words right now. I'm spilling over them. Tripping over them. But also, as a free-to-play player, or like somebody who doesn't have that much Stardust, a lucky Pokedex is also a great thing to work on, because it's half the amount of Stardust to power up. So if you're just like a budget player, a casual player who, you know, is not going to do 1,000 or like 100 raids for the current legendary, like if you're not going to play that hard, working on something like a lucky dex is a great thing to work on, especially because all these lucky Pokemon are actually going to be useful to you to the point where you can power them up and it's only half the dust. At the end of the day, lucky Pokemon, I feel like, are honestly one of the most underrated features in the game for casual and free-to-play players. The overall arching idea of Pokemon Go, I feel like it's, and maybe this is partly my fault, but it's leaned a lot towards only powering up 100% IV, best buddied, you know, the best of the best, only powering that up. But when in fact, you know, a 12-12-12 lucky is not that different than a 100% IV of the same Pokemon. Like statistic-wise, it's like less than 2-3% difference. So if you're somebody who doesn't care that much and it just wants the strongest Pokemon, like powering up Luckies is a great investment, especially if you don't have, you know, thousands of candies, or you're not going to do thousands of raids to try to get the best IV. So anyway, overall, moving on. Living extra large and extra small Pokedex. I was actually looking through the Pokedex recently, and I didn't even notice, but they did add, I'm pretty sure, unless I'm tripping, they did add an extra large and an extra small Pokedex. So getting an extra small and an XXL. Now, personally, in my opinion, this is what I'll say about the XXL and the XSS. First of all, XSL, super useless. Extra large is the only thing you can use in showcases. I don't know why they still haven't allowed us to have showcases with like extra smalls. You know what I mean? Like, it should honestly, the showcase, unless I'm tripping because I don't do showcases. I don't know why I keep using the word tripping today, but you should get a point value for how big that Pokemon is or how small that Pokemon is compared to its species average. And you should be able to enter both extra smalls and extra larges into the same showcases. Don't know why that's not a thing yet in Pokemon Go. It makes extra smalls completely mundane. So it kind of makes me almost be like, I don't really think it's worth working on an extra small of every single Pokemon collection. However, extra large, I think, is actually a great living collection to work on. Getting one extra large of every single Pokemon. And the main reason is because these Pokemon are actually useful. You can use them in showcases, right? So like when an extra, whatever Pokemon comes out in a showcase, I guess, you would, if you had this collection complete, you would have a Pokemon to put out into that showcase. Now, as I'm mentioning all these things, I will say working on only one living Pokedex is a great idea because remember the fact that there's about 865 Pokemon in Pokemon Go. So if you're gonna have like a living Pokedex, and then you're gonna have like a living extra large Pokedex, and then like a living shiny dex, that's already like 2,000 storage. So really focusing on one is the best way to go after it. But overall, again, personally, if you're somebody who likes to collect extra larges and extra smalls, go for it. I would never personally go for this. I also completely forgot to give a rating to Lucky Dex, so we'll do that in a second here. I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah, overall, in my opinion, I don't really think it's the coolest collection to work on. But again, that's my opinion. If you think it's cool, I completely respect it. At the end of the day, Pokemon Go is a game for enjoyment. If you get enjoyment out of it, go for it. But personally, me, I am not one for collecting those collections. I will say, an extra large and extra small Pokedex, though, pretty tough to complete, I would say. Pretty tough to complete because it's not where you just have to catch the Pokemon. You have to find an extra large or a small version of them. So I'll give it like a 6 or a 7. I don't really know the rates on finding extra larges and extra smalls, and there are certain events where they boost extra large and extra small encounters. But I don't know, 6 or a 7. 6 or a 7 for difficulty. And then the living Lucky Dex, I'm gonna give it like a 5 for difficulty because a living Lucky Dex is just getting Pokemon traded to you, and it's a lot easier to find people that have a certain Pokemon and then just get them to trade to you than it is to catch that Pokemon yourself, I guess. Is it? I don't know. I guess it depends on the area you live. Like if you're a rural player who lives in the middle of nowhere, yeah, I guess it would be pretty difficult to work on a living Lucky Dex. So maybe that's one of the ones where like it's location dependent. But overall, I do think it's easier to like get Pokemon traded to you, right? Because like you're pretty much just looking through a collection of 1,000 Pokemon and being like, I need this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, versus actually going out into the world and hopefully being lucky to catch so-and-so shiny version, if I'm comparing like a living shiny dex to a living Lucky Dex, I guess. So 5 out of 10. I'm gonna put that, maybe my ratings are not good, but anyway, okay. Moving on to my favorite, a collection that I've been working on and has been a huge source of my motivation. And that is my mega 100% IV level 50 best buddied Pokedex. Now, I obviously just took that to the extreme. So Sorry, I got a text from a friend that kind of shook me. I always took that to extreme, but I've been working on, if you can watch here on YouTube, 100% IVs of every single Mega Pokemon in Pokemon Go, and also having them best buddies. So you have Charizard, Ampharos, Gallade, blah blah blah, and this collection is going to increase, right? Because a bunch of new Megas are coming out to the game now. How could you take a Mega Hundo Dex? You could obviously just do Mega 100% IVs. You could do Mega 100% IVs at level 50. You could do Mega 100% IVs best buddied. And you can throw in all these like little like modifiers on any collection, right? You could have like a living, extra large, best buddied level 50 Pokédex. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can throw more things on it, and that's like a way you can play around with every single collection. But in my opinion, as somebody who really enjoys strength in Pokemon Go and enjoys like strong Pokemon, I do think that that is one of my most, I guess, like my biggest sources of motivation, and mainly to do lucky trades, especially like when I'm going to do a lucky trade, I'm always going ahead and asking people, yo, do you have so-and-so Mega that I'm missing, in hopes that I get 100% IV of it. So that's a huge source of my motivation. A great Pokedex, I think it's a great thing for people to start on too. It's not like there's like 48 Megas in Pokemon Go. Right now we have 46. We have Camerupt and Metagross coming out, and then Mega Mewtwo. So like, we have total in Pokemon Go, total 50 Megas plus whatever comes out in Legends ZA. So like Dragonite, Victory Bell, whatever. So like, it's not like there's too many to get, right? 50 Hundos is hard to get, but it is still like a reachable goal. It's not like you're like, I'm gonna catch every single shiny in Pokemon Go and do it. Like, it's a reachable goal. So in terms of difficulty, I'm going to put it at a 7 out of 10. I think it's hard to do because 100% IV is not easy to find, but I don't think it's as hard as catching every single shiny Pokemon in the game. You know what I mean? I don't think it's as hard as catching every. So anyway, I will say though, a harder version of this to do, and this is a Pokedex that I am taking up, although I have made 0 progression on it, is a G-Max Pokedex. Now, that means catching every single G-Max Pokemon in Pokemon Go. Now, you could make this again. You could throw on different modifiers. You can be like, hey, I'm working on a shiny G-Max Dex to catch one shiny of every Gigantamax Pokemon in Pokemon Go. Pretty hard to do. You could also be like a shiny 100%, or sorry, you could do like a 100% IV G-Max Dex. You could do a Shundo G-Max Dex if you want to take it even further. That's insane to do, but like, you can throw on different multipliers for it. Now, I've gone nowhere on my Hundo G-Max Dex. G-Maxes are honestly, like, I don't think they're featured enough in the game to have a 100% IV G-Max Dex. I think even the top players in the world don't have a 100% IV of every G-Max Pokemon. People who do a bunch of raids, because G-Max Pokemon just haven't been featured enough. But I think it is a cool Dex to work on, and it is one that I'm adding to my roster once I get my first Hundo G-Max. I still don't have a single Hundo G-Max, so I am not doing very well on this collection. But again, as somebody who likes power, who wants the best of the best, I will definitely be working on a 100% IV G-Max, level 50, and then most likely best buddy all of them in Pokemon Go. Especially because you only really need one of every G-Max Pokemon in Pokemon Go, because G-Maxes are the best attackers for Dynamax battles. You know what I mean? And although you can have 3 of the same G-Max Pokemon on your team, usually you don't want that, because you actually want to tank Pokemon, and tank Pokemon are actually better as Dynamax, or can be Dynamax Pokemon, because, you know, you have like Blissey and Chansey and all that stuff, and usually you switch into the G-Max to attack. So, you know, I think it's perfect, something I'm working on, 100% IV. Two other ones that I'll quickly mention: Shadow and Purified Pokedex. Catch every Shadow Pokemon in Pokemon Go, get every Purified Pokemon in Pokemon Go. Personally, not too big of a fan of doing this. Like, I don't really care too much about it. Again, I would prefer to be like a Shadow Hundo Dex, which you could obviously do, like getting 100% IV of every Shadow. Although I guess something to mention right now is, like, you also have to know your goals and how, like, when you're setting goals in anything in life, you don't want to set it to a point where it's too hard to do and you don't get the motivation out of it. You know what I mean? Like, getting 100% IV, if you're not, I guess the best way to put it is, like, if you're not making progress on that goal consistently, you're going to lose motivation for that goal pretty consistently. So, like, I don't think it's out of this world to be like, I don't think it's out of this world to make one of your goals catching every single shiny Pokemon in Pokemon Go, because you know, every week or so, or like depends how much you play, but you'll be catching shinies pretty often, right? But if you make a goal to get 100% IV Shadow Pokédex, like 1 hundo of every Shadow Pokemon, bro, the odds of getting a hundo Shadow, like you're only getting one of those maybe once a year for some players. Maybe even less, once every 2 years for some players. Depends how much Shadows you do, how many grunts you battle. So I do think it's good to set your goals. I just want to make sure my camera's not overheated. We're still recording? Yeah. I do think it's good to set like your goals, I guess you could say, at a realistic like amount of progress where you're consistently making improvements and you're making progress. Because like if you're not making progress, you're just gonna lose motivation. And that's like a huge part of this is like all these, when you are setting a collection and you're setting your next goal in Pokemon Go, make sure you're gonna be making consistent progression, and that will really help your motivation. Because like, you know, if not, there's gonna be no reason for you to go to play because you don't even know the next step to take. Like my therapist always tells me, but like when you have a big goal, you need to know what the small steps are. You know, instead of being like, hey, let's say, I don't know, where do you want to get to? I want to be a YouTuber. You know what I mean? Like that, and then like people are like, hey, what do I do? You know what I mean? Instead, you have to be like, okay, so what are the small steps for that? Number 1, create a YouTube channel. I can do that. I know how to enter my email. Number 2, plan a video, okay? Or number 2 could even be like, come up with video ideas, okay? So then like, even that gets broken down. Like, how do you come up with the ideas? Okay, breaking that down, step 1, you know, scroll YouTube to come up with inspiration. Step 2, maybe go on walks to come up with inspiration. Step 3, I don't know, brainstorm with, you know, bouncing back with AI or something like that, being like, you know, hitting AI with like topics and then seeing if AI hits you back with something that will then, you know, trigger something in your brain to come up with a YouTube idea. I don't recommend, by the way, I don't recommend typing, give me YouTube video ideas. How I use AI to come up with my video ideas is by saying, okay, I have this concept, and then it'll hit me with like different like subjects in that concept, and then that will allow me to then get inspiration using my brain, being like, oh, okay, wait, I like how he said that. What if I do it like this? You know what I mean? Like use it as a sounding board. Don't use it as a end all. You know what I mean? Like an end all. But I think it is a very useful tool for sounding and kind of like working with it versus like making it do all the work for you. Because if you make it do all the work for you, the content is just not going to be good, trust me. But anyway, back to it. Shadow and Purified, a good Pokedex to work on if you want to catch every single one. Again, for me, I just don't really care too much about catching one of every single Shadow Pokemon. So, moving on. Another Pokedex. Moving on to the second thing I'm working on. So I have the Mega Hundo Dex. That's one of the collections I really love working on. The second one is a regional 100% IV Dex. Now, as you can see, I am somebody who likes regionals. And a lot of people are saying, like, Pokedexy, now that you travel, all that stuff, you like, you know, like obviously you're gonna enjoy regionals and all that stuff, but not everybody can travel. And 100% I understand that because I had an opinion about regionals. I've loved regionals from before I could travel, from before I made Pokemon Go videos, from before I even would go to events. I remember the first 2-3 years of making this YouTube channel, I never went to a Go Fest. I had never been to a Go Fest. So before I even went to events, I loved regionals. And as you can tell, I've been working since the start of my Pokemon Go account, or I guess since I started playing again 5 years ago, a regional 100% IV Pokedex, aka getting a hundo of every single regional Pokemon. Level 50 Best Buddy would be even better, but right now we're just working on that. I know Zoe 2 Dots works on this as well. She's actually where my inspiration for this came from. Watching her content back in the pandemic. But yeah, I've loved regionals since they were released or since I started playing again, and I've been working on a hundo regional deck. Now this is by no means a Pokédex that I think or a collection that everybody could work on, because again, going back to it, if you don't have the chance to travel that often, and I'm in the privileged position where I can travel that often, but if you don't have that, it's gonna be to the point where maybe like you're gonna lose motivation to work on this because there's just zero chance for you to get it. I guess you can get the regionals from trades, and I've gotten a lot of my hundo regionals from trades as well. But yeah, overall, I think if you are somebody who does travel a lot and who does explore the world, maybe for your job, maybe you have a job that sends you to different locations in the world, this is a great little collection to work on because you can, you know, make memories by catching hundos from different areas of the world. I'm not very far on my hundo regional decks. I'm still missing a lot of them, but it is a collection that is near and dear to my heart that I'm really excited to continue to work on. Moving on, mythical level 50 Pokédex. While coming up with this video, this is a collection that I've never really seen anybody come up with. But if you don't know, in Pokemon Go, you can only get one of certain Pokemon. For example, Keldeo is a perfect example. Keldeo just dropped. Hopefully you had decent IVs. But you can only have one Keldeo in Pokemon Go. Even if you bought it back in the day, you can only have one Keldeo. So all these Pokemon that you can only get one of, I think it would be a cool Pokédex if you got them all to level 50. Now, how do you get them to level 50? Well, it actually costs a lot of money or a lot of strategy. You need rare XL candies. That's the only way to get XL candies for Keldeo. That's the only way to get XL candies for Mew, Celebi, Jirachi, etc. So this collection would definitely be for a top hardcore player, somebody who grinds a lot, who does a lot of raids, who plays a lot of raid days. Raid days are a great way to get rare XL candies because they drop from catching the legendary or whatever. Actually, speaking of this season, for the next 3 months, when you catch a legendary during a raid hour, you get a rare XL candy. So actually, if you want to work on this collection, playing raid hours for the next 3 months is a great way to get rare XL candies. But I think it would be cool if every single one-time mythical or legendary Pokemon that you can only get one of, you took it to level 50. Like if you had a level 50 Mew, Jirachi, a level 50, what else is there? Level 50 Mew, Jirachi, Celebi, Victini, Meloetta, Marshadow, pretty much all of those. You could throw in Keldeo, you could throw in Zygarde, you can throw in Zarude. Zarude, technically we have 2 of them. But all of those, I think would be fun to get them all to level 50. Now this is one of those Pokedexes which is kind of like really, really hard to work on that collection. Really the only way you work on getting that collection is by playing the events that drop rare XL candies. But I think it would be really cool. And if, honestly, maybe it's just a collection that I want to see somebody have. So if you have that, tag me on Twitter if you have every mythical at level 50. So far I have 3 actually. I have Zygarde level 50, Zarude level 50, and a Diancie at level 50. So I have 3. And I have enough to power up another one. But that's about it. So I got a long ways to go. Anyway, moving on to most likely... Okay, so wait, I haven't given them ratings. Gmax, 100% IV Dex. Difficulty rating, really, really hard in my opinion. I'm going to give that one... I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10. Mega Hundo Dex, I think I gave that a 7 out of 10. Shadow and Purified Pokedex, 6 out of 10, because again, like, it's not like you need to do anything insane to catch every Shadow Pokemon. You just need to be playing the game a lot, and you need to catch one of every Shadow, every Grunt rotation. Regional 100% IV Pokedex, I'll probably give that, again, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 because there is a collection that is harder, but a Regional Hundo Pokedex is very, very hard to do. Mythical level 50 Dex, I'll also give that a 9 out of 10. Theoretically, it's impossible. Well, no, it's not theoretically impossible to have. There could be somebody who has done it, but they must have done like so many raids in Pokemon Go. But that moves us on to at least part of the Pokédex section, because I want to talk next about like specific Pokemon collections. Moving on to the hardest collection in Pokemon Go, the 10 out of 10 most difficult collection, which I've only seen few trainers in the game actually working towards, is a 100% IV living dex. Now, what does that mean? That means catching a hundo of every single Pokemon in Pokemon Go that you could get hundos of. Now, obviously, this is not going to include like, mythicals that you only get one of. I guess you could bottle cap them and hyper train them, so that's like the way around that. But like, you can't, there's only been one bottle cap in Pokemon Go. So like, unless you've been insanely lucky and got a hundo Mew, Jirachi, Celebi, etc., like all the mythical hundos, you probably won't have those. But getting a hundo of every single Pokédex entry. Now, when I say Pokédex entry, I mean like getting any version of a hundo unknown counts towards that. You know what I mean? We're not talking about getting a hundo of every single unknown. You know what I mean? Because there's different forms of different Pokemon. But like Pokédex entries, so like you could even say like getting a hundo Galarian Farfetch'd counts as a hundo Farfetch. You don't need the Kanto version. But it's still 10 out of 10, most insane collection to complete. I've seen people, I think there's a guy on Twitter, TDRF5, something like that, who updates whenever he gets a new hundo. I don't know how many Pokemon are in Pokemon Go right now. I think it's like 850. I don't think we're at 900 yet, but getting 850 unique hundos, insane. Now, you can obviously throw on different multipliers on this. You can be like, I want a hundo level 50 of every Pokemon. That means a 100% IV Charmander at level 50, a 100% IV Charmeleon at level 50, 100% IV, Charizard at level 50. You can already see that, but 858 times. This is like a top of the top hunt for players, the hardest way to do this. If you are going to take on this challenge, please be prepared to never complete it. This is one of those collections, and also most of these collections, by the way, are going to be good motivation to work towards, but there's a high odds that you never actually complete them. If you complete them, my hat's off to you, but the whole point of the collections are things to work on, things to do in life, and a hundo level 50 dex might be one of the hardest, especially because new Pokemon are always coming out. But, you know, anyway, really, really hard to complete. You can even throw on like best buddied. If you were to best, like the ultimate collection for me in Pokemon Go is if you have a 100% IV, level 50 best buddied of every single Pokemon in the game. Now, I think the person with the world record most best buddies in the game has over 1,000 best buddies. So theoretically, I think it's Schaefer Quest, unless there's somebody else now. Like, theoretically, you could get there. It's not like it's impossible to best buddy 850 Pokemon or whatever. But it would take a lot of time because best buddies take super, super amounts of time to complete. I guess the best way to break this down maybe is instead of being like, hey, I'm going to complete, and you can do this for any collection, but like being like, instead of being like, I'm going to get a hundo of every single Pokemon in the game, or I'm going to get a shiny of every single Pokemon in the game, you could instead, how long are we recording? 33 minutes, oh my God. You could instead be like, I'm going to get a hundo of every single Kanto Pokemon. You know, break it down by generation might be a much easier and more attainable way to work on these goals. But also, like, you know, it's nice to be like, I'm going to catch every shiny in the game, because no matter what event comes out, there most likely will always be something for you to hunt on, because you're most likely missing a shiny from every single event. You know, theoretically, unless you're really far on and you're missing only a couple ones. So yeah, so that's crazy. Those are pretty much the main collections in Pokemon Go. However, this YAP session is not over, because I've come up with different smaller goals. If you find those goals way too big, different smaller niche collections you can go ahead and work on that I think the vast majority of players actually prefer to work on. So let me go find a new spot to sit, potentially in the shade, because I'm kind of burning up here, and let's continue to talk about it. Okay. I should bring water for these YAP sessions. I found a spot, it's not in the shade, but honestly, it's just because of the sunlight. Is this rude to put my feet on this table? I feel like it is. I'm not gonna do that. This is a chess table. It's actually pretty cool. I don't know if they have these in like parks near where you guys live, but like oh my God, there's a wasp on my phone. Bro, there's a wasp on my phone. Bro, chill. Dude, what is with wasps and me? I'm trying to record a YAP session, brother. Can you just please go away? Sorry, that was cringe. You know where you should go away to, though? Oh no, that's a horrible pivot. I do want to quickly mention two exciting things. We actually just dropped, I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about the Japan trip 1,000 times. And the one that's happening in November in Nagasaki, if you're coming on that trip, I'm super excited. This wasp, bro. I'm super excited for you guys to come on because we're going to be going to the wild area in Nagasaki the week before, and then the group trip happens in Osaka and Kyoto. And then finally, after the group trip, we're going to play the wild area global event all in Osaka, or Kyoto, which is exciting. But as you can see on screen, we've actually dropped 2 more trips. So if you want to come to Japan with us in November, it's pretty short notice now. You have like 2 or 3 more days to sign up for the trip before the trip closes. So definitely hit it up, link below. But if that's too short of a notice, we're actually hosting 2 more trips in the new year. So May 11th to May 17th, 2026, we'll be going back to Japan. We'll be in Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. And then if you'd rather, oh my God, bro, I just hit it. I just hit it. If you'd rather, I'm trying to talk about my group trips right now, Mr. Wasp. If you'd rather come to South Korea, which is a place I've always wanted to visit, I actually had a cousin that lived there for like 10 years. So I'm excited to go visit South Korea for the first time. We're gonna be going April 19th to the 25th. So 2 trips, they're both live. You can hit the link below if you wanna sign up for them. If you've ever wanted to travel to Japan or Korea or South Korea, and you've been a little scared, a little hesitant, this is a great way, in my opinion, to travel. From the first trip we had, it was an absolute blast, and I think it's the best way, especially if it's a very foreign, scary country. You're gonna be with 23, 24 other Pokemon Go players that will be able to help you, assist you, and we're all going to be playing Pokemon Go as well at the same time, so any raid, any Dynamax, any Gmax that comes along, we're going to have enough players to take it on. At nights, we do like trade grinds where everybody goes ahead and trades the Pokemon they caught during the day. I'm actually really excited for the Nagasaki trip, or the one in November, because all the Pokemon that everybody catches in Nagasaki, all those mighty Pokemon, we're going to be able to mirror trade them for Luckies, which is going to be insane. But overall, if you're interested in coming on one of the trips, I highly recommend you check it out, link below. I will say they are more expensive than if you were to just go to Japan on your own. If you're just trying to go to Japan for the first time on your own, on a budget, stay in hostels, spend not a lot of money, you can very much do it. But this trip is not that. That's not what this trip is about. This trip is about traveling. This trip is about wasps. This trip is about traveling with other people, with other trainers, experiencing that group, that community. I feel like I should move now. That group and that community and all of that. So that's like the whole point of the trip. It is a group trip. That social aspect is part of it. So anyway, link below. Let's stop talking about the trip. Let's move on to the collections. If this wasp gets me, bro, I'm cooked. I'm cooked. Anyway, okay. The most common collection in Pokemon Go that I think, honestly, you could say in any Pokemon game is the unknown letters. So if you don't know, Unknown is a Pokemon from Generation 2 that has, dude, I actually can't even remember how many letters in the alphabet there are. 26, 27, 28? Chat, am I cooked? I keep saying chat, am I cooked because I keep live streaming. But catching one of every single unknown letter is a great little, it's a really great little small collection to work on. It's not very easy, but also at the same time, like throughout trades with people and throughout events, like you can work and make substantial progress on that collection. So I think it is a great collection to go ahead and work on. You could also even take this further by being like, I'm going to catch every single unknown shiny. You know what I mean? Actually, speaking of, let me hop into my Pokedex. I have a 10-kilometer egg. And see how many unknown shinies I have. Now, something I've thought about and I'm not 100% sure is if every unknown shiny is even in the game. I'm pretty sure not every unknown shiny is in the game. You guys are getting a sneak peek into my collection. Let me see, it's Gen 2, right? Yeah, it was Gen 2, unknown. Bruh, wait, is unknown Gen 3 or am I cooking? No, it's Gen 2. Okay, so I'm missing unknown J, L, K, P, is that R? W? W is coming out during the wild area, I'm pretty sure. X, S, those are the unknowns I'm missing. So I don't know if every single one is out yet. There might be some of these that are technically still shiny locked. But what about my Pokemon collection? Let's see if we have every unknown letter. We are missing J, and we are missing S, and we are missing, what is that? Is that P-R? No. O. Q. We're missing Q. We're missing Q. Okay. So anyway, great little collection to work on. Something that I'm constantly working on. Well, I'm going to constantly work on. I'm not going to lie. I've never really checked my unknown collection until then. But I feel like it's just a fun little thing to do. You know, collect every single letter of unknown. And again, if you're missing some, you can always get them traded over to you. I feel like a lot of this, Pokemon Go is a collection-based game. So if you're going to try to catch them all, you can. But I feel like it's very, very hard to catch every single unknown letter because you would have had to go to a lot of in-person events to do that, or played for a long, long time. So the best way to actually look at it is to not be scared of trading and allow trading to be a part of a way that you complete your collection. Because I think that's just part of the game. It's part of the Pokemon universe. In the original anime, in an Indigo League, Ash trades away his Butterfree. Granted, 10 minutes later, he's like a little crybaby, and he's like, I miss my Butterfree, can you trade it back to me? But they show off trading, and it's part of the Pokemon universe. So anyway, next collection, Furfrou forms and the shiny Furfrou form. So if you don't know, you can form change Furfrou in Pokemon Go. I believe in total there is 9 or 10, including the regular trim of Furfrou. But they are regional locked forms. So if you don't know, you can't form change your Furfrou into any form into Pokemon Go at any point. You can only form change them depending on what region in the world you are. So again, this is one of the ones similar to the regional decks where like you're not really going to be able to complete it without either traveling or having people who travel trade Pokemon over to you. So it's kind of a tougher collection to complete. I guess actually talking about it, the unknown letters, I'm going to give them like a 7 out of 10. Furfrou form collection, I'm going to give that like an 8 out of 10. I don't think it deserves a 9 out of 10 because we've talked about some pretty tough collections, but it is still a hard collection. At the end of the day, there's only 10 Pokemon you need to collect to complete that collection. So like, you know, sheer numbers, if we're comparing it to like a living shiny dex, you know what I mean? Like, it's not as hard, but getting those Pokemon in those forms, pretty tough. But yeah, I would say if you're working on completing this collection, don't be scared to ask locals. I know I have, or people have asked me when I, was in Japan or whatever. They're like, hey, can you form change a couple Furfrus into, I forget what form is in Japan. Is it the Kabuki? Is it Kabuki form? Can you get some Furfrus into Kabuki form so when you come back, you can trade them over to me? 100%. I think there's also been global events where they've allowed us to form change different Pokemon into different forms. Maybe I'm tripping about that, but I swear to God, we had an event where like everyone, no matter where you are in the world, could like get like the European form or something, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, good little hunt to go ahead and work on. You could also pair this with actually a perfect little hunt to go after, Flabebe forms. Speaking of, Flabebe has a community day coming out next week, right? Next week is Flabebe Calm Day. Now, Flabebe, if you don't know, has 5 different flower colors. Red, blue, yellow, orange, white. 5 forms. Now, 2 of those are rare. I think it's orange and white are just rare spawns around the world. And then the other 3 are region locked. Red, blue, and yellow. So you can only get them in different areas of the world. So again, regional locked Pokemon. So difficulty-wise, we're throwing it an 8 out of 10 because you can't get them anywhere in the world. However, you really only need to get 5 different Pokemon. So it is not too hard of a collection to complete. Again, probably one that you'll either have to travel for or trade with, because I don't think there's ever been an event. Even Flabebe Calm Day, they still region lock the Flabebes, which is annoying. I wish they had actually unregion locked those. Because like I'm not opposed to having Pokemon being regionals, but then having like limited time events where they're available globally. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the perfect way to balance regionals. So it kind of sucks that, they're not available globally, but Flabebe forms, shiny Flabebe forms, great collections to work on. They're also beautiful, I will say right now. Like, if you don't know the Florges, like if you have like every single different Florges, they're also unique in their colors. I'm a big fan of Pokemon that are kind of like unique in which they have different forms that are just like, statistically the same, but like visually really, really cool. So big fan of that. That also makes me think of Scatterbug. Now, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to throw Scatterbug in the 9 out of 10 for difficulty rating, and mainly the shiny Scatterbug forms. Now, if you don't know Scatterbug in Pokemon Go, the only way to get it is by pinning 15 gifts from every single region in Pokemon Go, in which Pokemon Go is broken up into, there's like 15 Scatterbugs, is there? There's a lot of, I think it's 15. Is there 15 Scatterbugs? There's 15 regions in Pokemon Go. Oh my God, my brain just randomly remembered, by the way, there's Valentine's Day form of Furfru as well, which is another Furfru you need to get, but it's only available on Valentine's Day. I don't know why that just randomly came up when I was talking about Scatterbugs, but back to Scatterbugs. 15 Scatterbugs form in Pokemon Go. Getting a shiny of every single different, like, what are they called? Scatterbug patterns, I guess, Pavilion patterns. Pretty tough. Okay, so like, I would say this. Getting one of every Scatterbug is not too hard. It just takes coordination in which you have to add friends from different areas in the world. I'm actually working on a video and a channel in my Discord where we're gonna have it broken down into different like regions of the area. So you could go ahead and drop your friend code into whatever region you're from for Scatterbug codes. So highly recommend. We're definitely going to be having, we're definitely going to be making that video. So stay tuned if you want to learn how to do this easier. But getting a shiny of every Scatterbug, in my opinion, is one of the hardest things in the game, especially if you're going to get like a living Scatterbug dex where you have like a shiny Scatterbug, shiny Spupa, and a shiny Pavilion of every single region. So 100%, I think that's a very tough one. 9 out of 10, I'll give it. A really cool collection if you have it. And again, I think the Pavilion patterns are very, very beautiful. You could even say like, oh, are you going to get a hundo of every single region Scatterbug? I know Jeroen, a Belgian YouTuber, really likes hundos. I think he's working on a hundo living dex. And I do believe he's really big into scatterbugs. And I think he's actually made decent progression on a hundo Vivillon Pokedex. So congrats to him. Okay, let's rapid fire through a couple of these right now, a couple less notable ones. Number one, every Deoxys form. You know, there's 4 forms of Deoxys: attack, speed, normal, defense. If you have all of them, the shiny forms, pretty cool. Every Basculin, another one. You have red stripe, blue stripe, and white stripe Basculin. Really cool to catch all those. Every Genesect drive form, another collection you can work on. Do you have a frost drive? What is it, a water drive? Are they just called water fire? They're not, right? No, it's like a burn drive. I don't know the names. But there's a bunch of different drives of Genesect, which changes the type of Genesect's moves, Technoblast. If you have every single one, another cool little thing, little side collection you can work on, little motivation, for especially when Genesect comes back to raids. It's like a reason to raid Genesect. If, let's say, you're like, I want to get a hundo Genesect of every single drive, you know what I mean? Punkaboo sizes, you know, Punkaboo can be normal size, extra large, extra large, and extra small. Can it be extra small? I'm not sure. But Punkaboo actually, like, visually has a size difference. Punkaboo is like the Pokemon with the size feature before XXLs and extra smalls came to the game. You know what I mean? Like, it was doing extra large and extra small before everything else was. You have the Oricorio forms. You know, these are region-locked forms, similar to Flabebe almost, where you have, you know, Pom-Pom style, Pow style, Sensu style. I think there's 4 different Oricorios. Getting one of each is cool. Getting one shiny of each is cool. I don't know if these have ever come globally. I don't think so. Have they? I don't think so. So again, region-locked Pokemon, you'd have to get them traded. You have Sinistea and Poltegeist. This is a smaller collection to work on, granted one that's very, very hard in my opinion. If you don't know, there is a, maybe is it 1 in 100 chance of a Sinistea, it might even be more than that, being an antique form of Sinistea in which it costs 400 candies to evolve. And I believe it has like, I don't even think you can see it in the game, but it has like a stamp on the bottom saying it's antique. Pretty sure that's how it works. It's super rare to get. It's a super small little like Easter egg in Pokemon Go, but like that is a very rare Sinistea to go ahead and capture. So having, you know, 1 antique and 1 regular Sinistea, cool little collection. You can even do that with Poltegeist because you can evolve them. You have the Deerling seasons. You know, there's 4 different Deerlings and their Sawsbucks forms. I'm putting my foot up here. I'm sorry. I'm going to put it off the table, though, to be more respectful. You know, there's autumn, spring, summer, fall Deerlings, and then you have their evolutions. Cool little collection. Can you catch one of each of those? You want to catch one shiny of each of those? You want to catch a hundo of each of those? You know, add whatever you want to make it fun. You have the cast forms. There's 4 different cast forms. You have normal, snowy, sunny, and rainy cast form. Can you catch a shiny of each of those? You have the Burmies, you know what I mean? Like, you have Plant Cloak, Sand Cloak, Trash Cloak Burmy. Do you want to catch one of those 3? You know, catch them in the shiny forms. Again, these are all just like fun little mini collections to work on if you're looking for some motivation or a reason to play so-and-so event. But it brings us to a big one, in my opinion. A very hard one to complete. The Wasp is back, chat. The Wasp is back. And that is Rotoms. Now, Rotom has 5 different forms. And actually, this is a little bit of a rant, but before, I think early global Go Fests, the Rotom forms that were featured at the in-person events were actually able to be featured during the global events. I remember Go Fest 2020, Rotom Wash was available. Rotom Wash was available from snapshots from the global event. Then I think over the years, we had things like Rotom Mo. This past year, I think it was Heat Rotom. There was Rotom Fridge 2 years ago, in which if you went to the in-person events, the in-person Go Fest events, sorry. When the global event came, a couple weeks later, the snapshots were always for Pikachu. So getting one form of every single Rotom is a very, very tough thing to do. Again, it goes back to a lot of these collections I'm starting to notice are like region-locked collections. A lot of the forms in Pokemon Go are very tough to get if you're a free-to-play player or somebody who does not travel very often. You really have to rely on trades, which I don't think there's anything wrong with relying on trades. There's been a lot of trainers There's one Tess, I think it's Tess or Tass, in my local community who's always asking me, hey, do you have an extra Rotom fridge or whatever, because I know you went to so-and-so event. And I'll gladly give those away. Now, again, there might not be somebody like me who's just willing to give stuff away in your local community, but you can always ask around and see if you can ask around and get it. So yeah, definitely a tough collection to work on, but a cool one if you have one form of every Rotom. If you have a hundo of every Rotom, that'd be insane. I know even regular form of Rotom is hard to get, because I do believe we've only ever had 2 checks for regular Rotom. It could be shiny, but it was like 2 checks for it. Unless there's been other ways to get Rotom. I feel like Rotom needs to be featured more in the game. I feel like the Rotom is not a featured enough Pokemon. But anyway, moving on from Rotom, I definitely give a Rotom Dex like a 9 out of 10 difficulty. I'd arguably give it a 10 out of 10 to get a Rotom of every form. Pretty hard. But what I would also give a 10 out of 10, or maybe not a 10 out of 10, I'd give it a 7 out of 10, is every Spinda pattern. Now, if you don't know, there's, I think, 9 Spinda patterns in Pokemon Go. And usually, before it was every month, the pattern of Spinda you could get from the Make 5 Great Curveball Throws in a Row task would change. Usually it was every month. Now I believe it's every 3 months, every season it changes. Don't quote me. But collecting all 9 forms of Spinda is definitely a tough challenge. If you want to take this even further, of course, for any of these, you know, collecting all 9 hundo Spindas, all 9 shiny Spindas, definitely a hard challenge to complete. But that brings us down to our final couple ones. Collecting gender difference Pokemon, for example, like Pikachu. There's a difference between the male and the female version of a Pikachu. Nidoran, you know, catching a female versus a male Nidoran. Pyroar, when you evolve it, has a different mane, depending on if it's a female or male. Heracross, you know, collecting all the different gendered Pokemon can be a fun little challenge. I will say, though, that's a very easy one to complete, in my opinion. I guess, like, Salandit is a hard Pokemon because I don't know if there's any differences visually. I know Hippotas has a visual difference if it's a male or female. But anyway, collecting, you know, one of each gender of Pokemon. Costumes, you know, we can obviously, I'm not going to go too in-depth on costumes, but, you know, if you wanted to, this wasp needs to chill. If you wanted to collect every single costume in Pokemon Go, if you wanted to collect every single shiny costume in Pokemon Go, that would definitely be a 10 out of 10 difficulty. I feel like there's some costumes. The thing about costumes is once the event ends that the costume Pokemon is featured on, unless that Pokemon comes back in a costume, you can only really get it from trades. So I think that instantly gives it a 10 out of 10 difficulty rating because there's no way to get every costume in Pokemon Go unless you get it from trades. And some costumes are just insanely rare. So I can't be bothered with costumes. I think it's just too big of a task. And then finally, backgrounds. You know, we never really talked about it, but backgrounds are a newer thing in Pokemon Go. So collecting one of every background would be a cool little challenge to work on. Now, I think the rate at which background Pokemon are coming out, it might be hard to keep up with this collection because you'd have to fly around a lot, and backgrounds are usually location-based. You know, like, for example, right now, every football game in, all the football games, baseball games in America with the MLB have special backgrounds if you go to the baseball games. Also, like, sometimes we have, like, you know, stamp rally backgrounds. Like, I know at Go Fest in Osaka this year, there was like a stamp rally Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle you could get, which was super rare. So there's always just like different backgrounds you honestly arguably don't even know about. You know what I mean? Like, no one really even knows about like the Taipei special background or like, you know, so like, but anyway, it could be a fun little collection to go ahead and work on, trying to get as many backgrounds as you could. And that's the thing about a lot of these collections here is I will say they're evolving, right? They're nonstop being added to, being, you know, like, you're never going to complete the living shiny decks in Pokemon Go because new shinies will always be coming out. And even if you catch up in the game, there's always going to be new Pokemon coming out. You know, Game Freak is always going to be dropping new Pokemon games, meaning new Pokemon coming. And Pokemon Go will theoretically, you know, never run out of Pokemon. Maybe they'll slow down on the releases, but they'll theoretically never run out. So, Yeah, so overall, guys, that is it. If I missed any collections, let me know, but I'd be very curious to know in the comment section below if, first of all, if you're working on any collections yourself and what collections are those. And secondly, if any of these collections maybe sparked, motivation for you to start to work on and what collection you're going to be working on coming into the new season of Pokemon Go, coming out of Go Fest, heading into the fall and into the winter seasons of Pokemon Go. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys all being here. This was definitely a longer YAP session, more of a yappy one, but hopefully you guys liked the vibe. We tried to switch up to something more positive. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about next week. We're going to see where things go because I like to talk about relevant topics in Pokemon Go. But currently I feel like there's nothing too relevant, I guess level 80, to talk about. I guess like the new season. Maybe I can give my thoughts on the new season next week. But yeah, that's it, guys. Oh, there's a squirrel right there. That's it. Watch these other 2 YAP sessions on screen if you enjoyed this one. We will catch you guys all next Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to the cottage this weekend. Remember, at the end of the day, make sure you're enjoying life. Make sure you're enjoying life. I can't stress this enough, but whatever you do this weekend, make sure you spend some time on yourself and do something that you enjoy, because at the end of the day, you don't want to end up super old. This is what I live by, but you don't end up super old and being like, man, I just did not do enough stuff that I enjoyed. You know what I mean? Like, chase that. Anyway, we'll see you guys all next Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.